Tevi is a very story-driven metroidvania set in a giant world full of charming characters and hidden secrets that will keep you busy for many hours. This game has a bit too many cutscenes with dialogue that can go on for way too long, and I must say I appreciate all the voice acting, but it really broke the flow of the game for me. It's just too much exposition and banter. It almost became a bit tedious, to be honest, but thankfully there is the option to fast forward through it. The story also causes this game to be less open world than you would expect, because all the upgrades are story related. So if you decide to explore without following the waypoints to the next main story event, you will most likely get stopped in your tracks really quickly. I feel like the exploration could have been handled a bit differently, because right now there's almost no point in exploring every nook and cranny. I have no problems with a metroidvania that shows you where to go next, but you should have more freedom to get there, and backtracking should be encouraged more. I did really enjoy the gameplay, however. The combat is very fast paced and really combo heavy. If you know what you are doing and what sigils to use, it looks really spectacular. There's a lot more depth to it than you would think, and unlocking new moves is always exciting, and sometimes pretty hard to pull off. Thankfully, the boss fights are also really enjoyable. The bosses are all pretty tanky, but they have so many different attacks. And their desperation move is always very exciting. I also think the difficulty is pretty fair, but it gets much harder when you have unlocked like 50% of the story. Some bosses are vulnerable all the time, but there are also a few that can only be hurt when you deplete their break bar. This break bar refills really quickly, so you have to be really efficient with your damage output when this bar is depleted. It can also differ in how you can deplete their break bar, so there is some strategy involved sometimes. There are also bosses who have specific buffs, and they can do attacks that will give you a debuff if you aren't careful enough. I have to say, the boss fights were by far my favorite aspect about this game. There wasn't one I didn't enjoy. And while they really upped the ante later on in the game, and you can't just brute force your way through these fights anymore, I was really impressed by how creative each fight was and how stressful it could become. The level design is a bit basic though. Some areas have some interesting gimmicks, but most areas are just really straightforward and filled with specific enemies. They aren't boring, but they could use a bit more creativity. They all look very nice though, and I really appreciate all the different biomes you come across. The sound design, like the soundtrack and the sound effects, are really great. If you are streaming or recording the gameplay, you have the option to replace the copyrighted songs with alternative songs. I love this inclusion. It's a really nice gesture, and thankfully all these alternative songs are pretty great as well. So in general, Tevi really managed to blow me away with the fun combat mechanics, the really cool boss fights and the overall sound design. But there is way too much story for my liking, and the exploration is really limited because of this. It's only really useful to start backtracking when you have unlocked every upgrade. Otherwise, you are going to get a bit annoyed by all the dead ends. I also wasn't impressed by the level design, but some areas had some fun or interesting gimmicks for sure, so I can't complain too much about it, especially if you look at the amount of content in this game. It took me almost 25 hours to complete this game, and if I look at the overall picture, I must say, despite its flaws, I still had a fun time, and it left me pretty satisfied. That's why I highly recommend this game if you know what to expect. The limited exploration and the many cutscenes can be a big turn-off for veteran metroidvania players. But I still feel confident in recommending this game if you look at where it excels in. So be ready to embark on a charming adventure full of great set pieces and memorable boss fights, and uncover many dark secrets while you impress your opponent with your awesome combos.